campus by 5. Dare to explore. A reminder that Karina Henderson, as part of her senior capstone, will be hosting a family fun night with spaghetti dinner on November 15th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the American Legion in St. Johnsbury. The cost is by donation, and funds raised will go towards the Legion's support of veterans in our community. You are encouraged to RSVP by this Friday, November 1st. Happy birthday today to Aiden Gochi and Sailor Heeman. Happy birthday. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to hope for the mic to come back. In the meantime, I will try to project. We have a few late announcements this morning. Boys varsity soccer lost to CVU in the quarterfinals, 3-0. The team would like to thank all the fans for their support throughout the season. Good job, boys varsity soccer. Well played. Varsity football lost a highly contested, exciting game in Rutland, 34-27, but had a great season. Give it up for boys varsity football. So on Saturday, girls varsity soccer beat the defending state champs Colchester 3-2. Goals were scored by Adriana Heaver and 2 by Eilish Murphy. The girls move on to the semifinals on Wednesday here at home. All right, girls. Nice. Girls cross country finished 4th in Division I at the state championships on Saturday. Top finishers were Riley Strom, Anya Moriarty, Ruth Krebs, Stella Vanderland, and Phoebe Don. Good job, girls. Nice. And there will be more to come on this tomorrow, but many congratulations to the boys cross-country team on winning the Division I Vermont State Championship on Saturday. So I'm delighted to be able to announce our CTE Outstanding Students for the quarter in October 2024. Riley Matthews in both automotive technology with Mr. Deming and advanced welding with Mr. Mitchell. Riley Matthews. Logan Gingras, in Intro to Automotive Technology with Mr. Deming. Logan. Connor Simons, Intro to Automotive with Mr. Mitchell. Brendan Roy in Work-Based Learning with Mr. Carr. Raymond Roy in Woodworking with Mr. Stark. Tilly Lang in Intro to Electricity with Mr. Roberts. Elliot Marceau in Electricity 1 with Mr. Roberts. Justin Lewis in Electricity 2 with Mr. Roberts. Marissa May Windrow in Career Exploration with Mrs. Kendall. Daisy Hersom in Intro to Business with Mrs. Kendall. Zuri Douglas in Intro to Human and Professional Services with Mrs. Kendall. Ilyana Veladakis in Human and Professional Services 1 with Mrs. McGarvin. Ava Ward in Human and Professional Services 2 with Mrs. McGarvin. Riley Strom in Intro to Baking with Chef by Stricky. Ava Weaver in Intro to Culinary Arts with Chef Andre and Mrs. Libby. Isabella Simons in Culinary Arts with Ms. Libby and Chef Andre. Tristan Correa in Intro to Culinary Arts with Chef Hale. Alexander Mitchum in Intro to Construction with Travis Bugby. Kyle Johnson in Construction Technology with Mr. Bugby. Kenzie Barrett in Career Exploration with Mr. Bugby. Bruno Alvarez Carreras in Entrepreneurship 1 with Mrs. Murphy. Sophia Deschamps in Entrepreneurship 2 with Mrs. Murphy. And finally, our plumbing folks, Dominic Gilly in heating and plumbing with Jeff Roberts. Franco Millington in Intro to Heating and Plumbing with Jeff Roberts. Oh, and Maddie Royer in Intro to Electricity with Mr. Roberts. Congratulations, all our CTE students of the quarter. Glad to recognize you all. So happy Monday, everyone. This morning, this week, definitely next week, I'm eager for us as a community to take some deep breaths. As you go about your days, I hear you. Please do take a few actual deep breaths. They have a semi-miraculous effect on our nervous systems. Breathing deeply reduces stress by signaling to the brain that you're safe and therefore can relax. It helps you sleep more deeply, have a better immune system, and even be less likely to get angry. There's a reason that when you're getting angry, someone might suggest that you take a deep breath. Even though that is often the thing you least wish to hear in that sort of moment, it is nevertheless excellent advice. Taking deep breaths makes you able to concentrate and deal with pressure. A soccer goalie, for example, faced with 2 rounds of penalty kicks to decide a playoff game, for instance, might take deep breaths between saves to keep calm enough to make that final clutch save. Someone taking the SAT or having an interview might take deep breaths to focus and to think clearly. We need these because the fact is there are things to be anxious about in the world, and most of us are feeling one or another species of that anxiety. Anyone who tells you that there's nothing worrying them right now is probably just not sharing. Many of you are applying to college with a deadline at the end of this week, thinking about whether you'll get in, how you'll afford it, if you do. Others of you might be beginning to worry about getting a job. Some of you had midterm grades that you didn't like. Some of you are dealing with family difficulties or health issues. Some of you might read the newspaper or watch the news regularly, and all of these things can create real anxiety. We also have a presidential election a week from tomorrow. It is an election that it is safe to say will be close and contentious, and that as it is reported will reveal some unavoidable facts about our country. It's not news that we find ourselves divided, rural and urban, suburban and small town, people with or without college degrees, people of different genders and races, rich and poor. If you're paying attention to the poll and survey data being produced constantly to try to help us understand who we are as people, you'll see that people jockeying for power, what Walt Whitman called trippers and askers, are using every possible way of divvying us up to try to understand and perhaps even to sharpen the ways we might disagree with one another. You may ask, Dr. Howell, where does the American poet Walt Whitman mention trippers and askers, and what was he talking about? Thank you so much for asking. Trippers and askers come from a section of the long poem Song of Myself, which sounds a little self-centered until you realize that in singing about himself, Whitman is actually singing about America. When he says, "I contain multitudes," he means that as the poet, he can expand his voice to speak for everyone. He can hear everyone and transcribe their voices for the rest of us. For instance, Whitman is celebrating the singing of our CTE students of the quarter in the poem, I Hear America Singing. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. He lists just about everyone, the farmer, the dressmaker, the mother, the opera singer, and on and on. And each one, Whitman says, is America. When they sing, America sings. And speaking of America and presidents, Walt Whitman was a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln, not just in the abstract, not just as the president, but as a person. During the Civil War in the early 1860s, Whitman went to Washington, D.C. to serve as a volunteer at a field hospital, where he saw all kinds of truly horrifying things. While he was there, he sort of sauntered over to the White House to pay a visit to Abraham Lincoln, because at that time, you could just go in and visit the president and give him a piece of your mind. So Whitman liked Lincoln as a human being. He was gentle and quiet and humble. Whitman felt that what Lincoln was trying to do for America, to keep it together, to see its common purpose and find its common future, and imagine it as a democratic ideal with liberty and justice for all, was what the American poet would also do. So stay with me. In the short section of Song of Myself that I am about to read here, Whitman complains a little about those things that he's often asked to talk about, the things that those trippers and askers ask him and suggest might define him, but that he thinks are mundane and irrelevant. Where he lives, which was New York City, incidentally, his personal background, how much money he has, how he feels about current events, the war, who he hangs out with, or any number of superficial details about his life. They are indeed the kinds of facts that we often use to define ourselves and define each other. Whitman suggests that those things are not really him, but that the me, myself, is something apart, something much less contentious or susceptible to being divided up and made a wedge. The me, myself, that we can sing about and that Whitman wanted to sing about is what connects us. So I'll leave you with this today as we witness and wait and try to keep from being overwhelmed by the fever of doubtful news and the forces that try to reduce us to demographics and define us shallowly and draw us into arguments. Trippers and askers surround me, people I meet, the effect upon me of my early life or the ward, the city I live in, or the nation, the latest dates, discoveries, inventions, societies, authors, old and new, my dinner, dress, associates, looks, compliments, dues, the real or fancied indifference of some man or woman I love, the sickness of one of my folks or of myself, the ill-doing or loss or lack of money or depressions or exaltations, battles, the horrors of fratricidal war, the fever of doubtful news, the fitful events. These come to me, my days and nights, and go from me again, but they are not the me myself. Apart from the pulling and hauling stands what I am, stands amused, complacent, compassionating, idle, unitary, looking with side-curved head, curious what will come next, both in and out of the game, and watching and wondering at it. Backward I see in my own days, where I sweated through fog with linguists and contenders. I have no mocking or arguments. I witness and wait. So as we head into the next couple of weeks, please appreciate the unity and community that we have around us here. Do act, but also remember the value of witnessing and listening. Please thank your teachers for all they do, and please, please remember to take those deep breaths. Faculty.